All right. Okay, we're alive.
Hello, welcome to InterPlay Big Body Stories. My name is Phil Porter. I'm one of the co-founders of InterPlay. And for those of you who may be new to InterPlay, hopefully there's some folks watching who, you know one of the people who's telling stories, but you don't know exactly what InterPlay is. Well, InterPlay is an active, creative way to unlock the wisdom of the body. And we do that through improvised stories and songs and movement. And in the InterPlay system, we have what we call forms, these kind of structures for how we structure our improvisations. And one of the forms we use is called a big body story. And a big body story is just a story that could include any of those elements: sound, movement, story, mixed together. And the stories that we tell are mostly from our personal experience. And we will be improvising these today. These are not stories that we've rehearsed or practiced, presumably. Now, I don't know. I didn't check around with everyone to make sure they weren't rehearsing, but mostly we step into the moment to see what's there and create a story, which is what we're going to do today. This is only the second time we've done a live stream of these stories, so we're excited to be doing this. We're really glad that you're here. If you have subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can also participate in the live chat. So you could let us know if you're willing to say who you are and where you're from. We would welcome that information. And also, after each story, one of the things that we do is we first take a little breath, and then we're just gonna, those of us who are telling stories will, in our own chat box, we'll just put 3 or 4 words or phrases that that struck us about the story. It could be words directly from the story or just our response to it or whatever. And you can do the same if you're subscribed to the channel. You can use the chat box on YouTube. And we're really delighted to have Maryellen May here helping us do this technical part. And she will be monitoring that, and she will come on and we'll read the things that we wrote in the chat box. And she will read a few of the comments that you have put in the chat box there. The stories are about 5 minutes long. Randy has a bell, which he rings at 5 minutes, and sometimes we end earlier, sometimes we go a little bit over, but it's in the 5-minute range. So this whole thing will take, I don't know, between 30, 45 minutes. I don't think it'll be as much as an hour, but there'll be 6 stories. So you can do the math. So anyway, we're really glad that you're here. And I'd like to ask the storytellers to introduce themselves and tell you where they're from. So again, my name is Phil Porter. I live in Oakland, California.
And hello, good evening. My name is Bilha Billman-Rivlin, and I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
My name is Judith Valerie, and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina.
My name is Sheila K. Collins, and I'm zooming in from the land of the Algonquin and the Shawnee and the Lenape and the Many Waters Band of the Eastern Cherokee, which is now Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
My name is Karen Austin, and I am zooming in from the other side of the world in Kiama, Australia, the land of the Dharawal people.
I'm Randy Newswanger. I'm today in Lancaster in eastern Pennsylvania.
Great, so everybody take a deep breath. And let it out. Anything else I should be saying, Randy?
I think that's it.
Okay, so we're gonna go in the order that we just introduced ourselves. So I'm first up, so here we go. So there I was behind the furnace doing stuff. No, this was years ago. This was years ago when I grew up in Bloomington, Indiana. And we lived in, when I was in 4th grade, we moved to a house. It was a ranch style house. Do you remember the days of ranch style houses? I'm not even sure whose ranch it was based on, but it was a ranch style house. So it was, you know, kind of all on one level and blah, blah, blah. But there was a basement over under the whole thing, kind of what you would call an unfinished basement. Now, if that house were in California, that basement would have been turned into like 5 different living spaces. And people would have been renting them out for a whole lot of money. But we just had a big old basement with a lot of room. And in the basement was a storage room. And in the storage room was also the furnace. And behind the furnace was a sink. So I often found myself doing arty, crafty sorts of things using the sink behind the furnace in the storage room in the basement of the ranch style house. Now you wouldn't really think of, you know, the space behind the furnace as being the most kind of creative place. There were no windows. It was dark back there. I don't think I was afraid to be back there, not at all. But it was kind of an interesting and strange space to be spending in time. And I think, you know what I think I was doing? Tie-dyeing. I did all the crafty things. And I think I was tie-dyeing. Who knows really what I was doing back there behind the furnace, but I think I was probably tie-dyeing. But the ironic or the coincidental or the relational or the something is that wasn't the only dark place where I did artwork. Because in, I don't know, sometime in the 70s, that's how old I am. I was doing stuff in the 70s. I was going to a Mennonite church in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now that's a whole nother story of how I ended up at a Mennonite church, because I'm not Mennonite by background, although I really like Mennonites. Some of my best friends are Mennonites, but I ended up at a Mennonite church. And you know what Mennonites do? They create community, which is a really wonderful sort of thing. And so it ended up that a group of us, 5 or 6 of us, bought a house together in Indianapolis and moved in to create community. Okay, here's the side story. We bought that house, which was like 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, for $25,000 on an assumable mortgage, which meant we only had to come up with like $5,000 to buy this house. I can't believe that was the truth. That's how old I am. You can buy a house for $25,000. In the house, in the basement, was a dark room. It didn't have any equipment in it, but I took it over. I took it over as my art space. Even though at that point, I didn't really think I was an artist. I just thought I was crafty. So I was doing a lot of stuff down in the dark room, in the basement. What do you think I was doing down there? I don't think I was tie-dyeing, but I think I did batik, silkscreen printing, and some dyeing. I think I was dyeing. I think I was dyeing in the dark room in the basement of the house on Ruckle Street in Indianapolis, Indiana, that I shared with a bunch of Mennonites. Art in the dark. Art in the dark. Art in the dark. And everybody take a deep breath. And we'll put some notes in our chat box, just a word or a phrase or 2 or 3. And those of you who are witnessing, if you want to do that too, you can do that. We'll just take a little minute to do that. And I'll read some of these. Dark rooms, sinks, and furnaces. Art in the dark sounds fun. So much imagery and secret creativity. Transformation of crafty into artsy. Lovely hand movements. Loved how it all came together like pearls on a string. So thank you for witnessing that story. And Maryellen, do you want to read some of the comments in there?
Oh, I do. Let's see here. Eileen says, satisfying hearing clear images of place articulated, Phil. Harriet Platt says, art. Ralph says, art in the dark. I love it. You could say that of all art, it emerges from the dark inside us.
Thank you. All right, Bilha, you're up next.
Yes. So in the dark, things happen in the dark. And yesterday, I started to contemplate about mirror neurons. It's after I met a squirrel on the back porch. I went out and there was this squirrel. And he was just looking at me in the beginning. He didn't run. That's alerted me a little bit. And then I was just standing there, and then he came further closer to me. Just like that, with open eyes, like really yearning for something. And I started to be very frightened. All kinds of movies went in my head about all these animals that get rabies and attack people. And maybe this is this squirrel because instead of running away as usual, he's coming at me. And I thought about this mirror neurons. So, mirror neurons is where all this part of the neurons in your brain that when you act, they act as well. They wire the fire. And the thing is that often when we watch someone else act and his neurons are wiring and firing, so the same neurons in our head are doing the same things. And that's how community get created, because we get the sense of the other person and we understand it. But do we? Do we really understand it? Do we really get it? So eventually I say to the squirrel, I'm really sorry. I have to go in. And he just stood there. And I went in and shut the door because I want to save my life. And later on, I told all about it to my husband, about the squirrel. And he laughed and said, yeah, art with the constructor that's working outside on the porch on our house. Every lunchtime, he used to look at the squirrel and tempt him with a biscuit. And the squirrel would come and eat the biscuit. And then art was gone. And I was there. I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. All I wanted was some communication and food. I got so scared. So sometimes these mirror neurons, our embodied knowledge, is being covered. And that moves me to my mother and my relationship with her. She made me so angry. So many times in my life, my mother, she wanted to pull me. Especially when I grew up as a teenager and I started to fall in love and get passionate. She got so fearful. And one time, it was even more unique because I met a boy. He was so handsome. I really fell in love with him. I invited him. My mother saw him. She said after, "You are not seeing this man ever again." I had no idea why. What happened to her? She didn't allow. And of course I rebelled. We met whenever we wanted. Behind her eyes. What I didn't know. Well, I didn't know he was limping. He had a limp. And I didn't care about that. My mother, she guessed why he was limping. He was limping because when he was a child, he had polio. And he got all healthy, but still. So only later on, I found out that I actually had a sister who died from polio. My mom couldn't tell me that until long after, when I started to insist. So much we don't know. And I think maybe this is really a love story for my mom. Now I know. Thank you.
And take a deep breath and let it out. And we'll put some notes in the chat box. And Bilha, do you want to read yours?
Maybe you'll read it faster.
Okay. Tender and true. The courage to know, the courage to love not knowing. Wow, such surprise from a squirrel and fear. Long search for simple answers. Understanding each other and each creature, squirrels, moms, fear, rebellion. Thank you, Bilha, for your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Maryellen, do you want to share anything from the chat box?
There's a delay, so I'm sure there'll be more after. But for now, Akla says, squirrels and mirror neurons. Love it. Did you become squirrely or did the squirrel become Bilha? Wiring and firing when knowledge gets in the way. No mirror neurons in mother-daughter relations. Karen says, thank God you saved yourself. LOL. Holy communion and so profound. Sacred text. All that born of a squirrel. You move me to tears. And Eileen says, do we get it? Do we really understand? There's so much we don't know.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Comments. Yeah, thank you, Bilha. Okay, Judith, you're up.
A couple of weeks ago, people kept sending me texts and emails with condolences. I got a phone call from my third grader from years ago, who's now 54, because the Queen had died, and they thought I would be just so disappointed and so devastated, and I hadn't really given it much of a thought. But then I did begin to think, and I jotted down a few memories, and I realized how much Her Royal Highness, the Queen, affected my life. As far back as I can remember, because the Queen became the Queen the same year I was born. So the Queen had always been the Queen while I was alive. So when I was a very little girl, there were pictures of the Queen on the wall. And she had the same hairstyle as my mum, this sort of permed, like wavy things at the front. And they both had the same slightly strict expression a lot of the time. I used to kind of get confused as a little girl, like, which is mum and which is the Queen? They both kind of peered down at me from above. When I was a few years older, I saw the first Queen's speech at Christmas. Every year they broadcasted it on the radio, and she did the first one on television. And so we went to my grandparents' house. They had a black and white television. And at the beginning, they played God Save the Queen. And my grandfather stood up to God Save the Queen. And I reached up and held his big, strong hand and stood as tall as I could. Posture, speaking properly, and table manners, crucial to a British subject. My parents said that table manners were extremely important to the royal family. So in my family, we had table manner competitions every year. Every year we fell for it. A month, my sister Jennifer and I had to practice elbows off the table, no mouthful, using our little serviettes, and generally having impeccable table manners. So for a month, we would try and be the little ladies that my mummy wanted us to be. One time I remember that, you know, in England, you're supposed to use your knife in your right hand, fork in your left hand, and you're supposed to like cut and somehow squish the peas on top of the fork. And one day I used my spoon to scoop the peas, and my mum said, Judith, you wouldn't do that if the Queen was coming, now would you?
Oh my.
I had to go outside in the back garden and dance and sing to let off steam before I went back in our little house with the little rooms with the Queen on the wall. We actually had a picture of Henry VIII on the stairs. That was my father's. I have no idea. Royalty sort of went back in the blood, you know, and it was in the air we breathed back to the 800s or 900s, the Anglo-Saxon kings. So monarchy was sort of like the norm. When I was a brownie, like a young girl guide, I had to do my brownie promise to do my duty to God and the Queen, like God and the Queen, God and the Queen, God and the Queen, just one thing, you know, God and the Queen, together. Who knew where one stopped and the next one started? God and the Queen, God and the Queen, Queen and my mum, mum and my Queen, Queen and my mum, God and my mum. Oh my God, had to go out in the garden. Wing on the wing. Now, my mum loved geography. We had a really nice, big, round globe. And she would tell me about these countries like the Gambia, Australia, Kenya, on and on and on. And the words sounded like poetry to me, so I would repeat them. But when I looked at the map, the globe, I'd say, Mummy, why are so many of them pink? And she'd say, well, they're part of the Commonwealth. And I'd say, but they're so far away. How can they be part of Britain if they're so far away? And she would say things like, well, darling, that's just part of the history. But one thing I do know about the Queen, whether you believe in monarchy or not, whether you can think about colonialism and racism and all the terrible things that happened in the name of the British Empire or not, when the Queen did her speech in 1957, she said, I can't lead you into battle, I can't make laws, but I can give you my heart and work for you. And she was the most hardworking woman I think I've ever heard of for over 70 years, doing her duty. And so, please, God save the Queen and may she rest.
And take a deep breath. And let it out. And we'll put some notes in the chat box. Judith, do you want to read what the notes in our chat box?
Oh, let's see. God and the Queen and Mum, a lifetime of reflections. God and the Queen, like one word, God Queen. The glomeration of Queen God, Queen Mother, seeping in and only seeing when not there. God and the Queen's really popular today. God and the Queen and Mum and the Queen, early shaping memories, elbows off the table. One more great glimpse into the influence of monarchy on little people.
And Maryellen, do you have some comments from the chat box?
So Richard says, God save the InterPlay performers. Angela says, oh, your royal jadedness. I'm so glad God is still saving you. Absolutely brilliant and delightful. Eileen says, imagining the regality of your mummy, the Queen being such a delightful presence in your early years.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith, for your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for all those comments. Sheila.
Oh, that feels good to take those big breaths. Because I was talking with a friend today and we were sort of noticing, like, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's a lot in the big world and even in our little worlds, there's a lot going on. Way too much stuff going on, way too much. Now, we kind of said to one another, it's very important that we just do the part that's ours to do, right? I mean, we really can't. We really can't do much about, well, we can do a little bit about the election. I mean, our part, a little bit, but it's not, it's not looking good. And the feeling that if I do my little part, I don't know if anybody will even notice. If I'll even notice. You don't think about grief as being something that happens in the big world, but oh, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. And we have all this stuff going on in the little world. I mean, you know, our kids and, you know, our neighbors and what my granddaughter, she called me today. We were going to get together and her uncle collapsed on the floor and they had to take him to the hospital. I mean, in the middle of us having our InterPlay online. I have made a discovery. I feel like I should tell people when I make discoveries. I mean, it takes me a long time to make discoveries, but when I do, I feel like I should be telling people. And so the one that just came to me just now is, did you know that you have, and I have, a playlist inside of our, well, I don't know where it is exactly, but it's somewhere inside. So I'll give you an idea. So we were talking about how bad the world is and awful and all that stuff. But then, I don't know. Oh, I know what it was. It had to do with the Queen. It did. The Queen was saving us in a way because, well, what it was is there was a wonderful article. I have it right here. And so it turns out the day the Queen died, there was a rainbow over Windsor and also Buckingham Palace. I mean, and I know Judith knows this, but some of you may not know. I mean, this is a very dark, wet, not very many sunshiny day. You know what I'm saying? And you've got to have sun and rain together. So the day she died, I mean, they had just announced it. They had just, and there it was. And this made my friend remember a time when she was feeling so bad. Her husband had died, and she was trying to explain to her 3-year-old, you know, how we must, you know, carry on. And they went, and there was a rainbow right there at that moment. So then that made us, this is a playlist part, it made us think of songs about rainbows, which we were able to do. I thought of one. I thought of one from Sesame Street. And I don't know, it has something to do with rainbows, but mostly it's about doing this while you're singing. Woo-hoo. Look for the rainbows, look for the rainbow. Well, it's the case. Now, maybe it's just my case because I'm really old and I've heard a lot of songs. I mean, but somehow they're all in there somewhere. And just like with the Queen, if it comes out at the right time, I mean, it's magic. It makes you think, gosh, maybe not only are we not in charge, but maybe we don't have to do everything. I mean, not every single thing. Something, maybe there are rainbows after the storm.
And take a deep breath. Let it out. Thank you, Sheila. And we'll put some notes in the chat box.
Randy, rain and sun together, that's how you get the rainbows. Yeah, pretty simple, huh? Doing our little bit to look for rainbows no matter the storm. Love the songs that hide within. Rain and sun together, big world grief and personal grief, inner songs. Fancy the Queen creating rainbows from the heavens. Oh no.
And Maryellen, would you like to read some comments?
Yes. Playfulness through grief. David says, I love the idea that we have playlists going on inside. Great ending too. Karen says, Sheila, thanks so much for sharing the Queen's rainbow story and your Sesame Street bit. I resonate. The right time is magic. Thank you for taking me there. Eileen says, all the wisdom of rainbows and breathing and moving when unknown things happen. So much hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, for your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Karen.
I like playing with 4-letter words. I mean, how many 4-letter words do you allow yourself to play with? There's been one that's been on my mind just for a moment or two. And it brings me back to a photo, like a photo. I think I must have been about 5 years old. And it's a school photo. We've got our green box pleated tunics on with the little white shirts underneath and the little belt. And because I'm only 5 foot tall, that also tells you how old I am, because I'm not American and we moved into the metric system a little while ago. But, you know, I'm in this photo quite in an interesting place, because normally they'd have me on the end. I'd be the little one that just falls off the end if everyone else is too big. But this one, I'm right in the middle of the photo and I'm on the front bench. And I have so much life in my face. I'm leaning forward and I'm leaning in and I'm saying, world, here I am. Where are my adventures? I am ready. And now I look in the mirror and I go, what happened? What happened? All of this time has passed, all of this time, and it's done things to my body. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but like there's a different color of my hair, like that. This bit's brown, but this bit, it's like time has changed my hair. Like nothing else has changed it, but it's like time. And I look back and I go, and this little girl, and then what happened in the meantime, and being, it's like the gem workers, you know, when they get this raw gem, this raw stone out of the earth, and then it goes through this tumbling machine and all of the elements of light and wind and water, and then it comes out with different colored hair. And there are moments that seem to last a really long time, or moments that no time at all. And then we go, oh, I have free time, it's work time, it's sleep time, but really, all we have is time. All we have is time. And the other 4-letter word I want to play with today is rain. Rain. Oh my God. Australia and rain for a year almost. For a year. And yet 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, or almost coming up to 3 years ago, we were praying for rain. Like we were praying on every cell of our being for rain to put out those fires. Every cell of our being, and our thoughts were for rain. We just didn't know it'd take 2 years to come. There's another word. There's another word that I think is spelled incorrectly. Flood. It shouldn't have two O's. Like it should just have a U. F-L-U-D, flood, another 4-letter word, because there are so many communities that are impacted. And they're waiting in these moments of time for the water just to come downstream and see what it will do to their homes and their families and their animals. And it's like all of these 4-letter words, and you want to say them, and some of them we're allowed to say online, some of them we're allowed to say in PG, and some of them we're not, and some of the ones that we're not allowed to say in PG times are the ones that allow for the most full body expression. And there's a moment in time, in like 10 or 12 days, like I could really count each tiny little seconds till I get to go and see Hamilton. And it's like, and it's a moment in the future. And yet it reminds me a moment in the past where I met this woman from New York City, but I met her in Tasmania. And so it's like Australia's already ahead of the US, because time-wise, it's like Friday morning and I know it's Thursday evening. And this woman from New York City, and it was before the election, and she's wearing this pink pussy hat. And I'm going to see Hamilton, and she'll be there energetically beside me because she loved Hamilton. And she would talk about it in every single moment. And we even played the soundtrack of Hamilton, and she went like this. And so she's coming with me to Hamilton in spirit. And yet the show is being performed at Her Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne. And I realized that having the Queen alive for the whole of my life, I don't want to go to His Majesty's Theatre. And my little rebellious act, coming from that little girl in the photo who really was a rebel and wanted curiosity and courage, that little girl is still walking in to Her Majesty's Theatre.
And take a deep breath. And let it out. And we'll put some notes in the chat box. Thank you for that story.
Time, adventure, gems, different color, change, time, words as adventure, cut into life, beautiful, real gem. Very clever exploration of words and relationships. I loved your pauses. The close in and far away, the words you're not supposed to say. Such a strong girl, ready for what's coming next. Still, you may be her. Fire and water having to wait. What is time really?
Maryellen, do you have some comments from that chat box?
David says, thank you for the perspective on time. Precious. Ralph says, time and rain. So much wisdom emerges from play. It's moving how the afflictions of rain have replaced the afflictions of fire. Eileen says, the slowing down of time. Feeling the essence of stillness here, Karen. Thanks for the adventures.
Thank you, Karen, for your story. Thanks for all those comments. And Randy. You're up.
I was driving through rain today, and it's when it's raining and I'm in my car that I am grateful for the windshield wipers. And 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 in June, when my car was in the shop, it came back with the windshield wipers going a little bit too far down off the windshield and then not all the way to the edges. And like, I couldn't figure out how this could possibly have been. And I thought about calling the car shop to tell them that this was happening and ask them why. But I only thought of it when it was raining and I was driving, and I didn't want to use my phone from the car while I'm driving in the rain to call and ask the question, and then I would get out of my car and I would forget. I picked my pumpkins from my pumpkin patch. Now, it might be, I live in a city and the backyard is small and the garden is only a small part of the small backyard. And so it's a stretch to say that I have a pumpkin patch. I have an oval raised bed with a few things growing in it. And there were 3 of the dozen pumpkin seeds I planted that I saved from last year, that I saved from the year before and the year before and the year before, that I'm breeding my own line of Randy's pumpkins. And I planted 12 seeds and 6 of them came up and 3 of them didn't get eaten off by the squirrels, who might make me afraid, or might just be looking for something to eat, or maybe it was the rabbits, or maybe it was the cow. Who knows? Who knows what ate? Oh, 3 of them. Is 3 pumpkin vines enough to be a pumpkin patch? Well, it gave me 6 pumpkins, and I put them all on the deck table so I could take a picture and show everybody on Facebook that I'm growing a line of pumpkins. And the next day I walked past that oval raised bed and I looked into the pumpkin patch and there was 1 more pumpkin. And you haven't seen a picture of it on Facebook because it's still in the garden. It didn't make it to the table. And it didn't, there's a star and there's a pumpkin. Ah, see the pumpkin line, the squirrels were eating my pumpkin, so I had to bring it inside. But it's a 2-lobed pumpkin, and I'm trying to get it so it's all solid up here, and then it will make great pies. Oh, great pumpkin pies. I checked 2 books out of the library and I only read 1 of them. It's not like I overlooked the second book. I just didn't get around to reading it. And I so seldom do this, but I just took that back to book. I just took that book back to the library completely unread. It's like complete darkness inside that book. I have no idea what's in that book, and probably I never will. Now there's a lot of books I'll never know what's inside of them, but that one it was this close. It was this close to me knowing what was inside the book, but I took it back. Somehow that feels more important than all the books I've never read. I like to bring my stories around in a circle, but I can't today. I can't even remember where I started, and so I think I'll just end with that memory of going into Dad's study, Mom's sewing room. Mom had a desk, Dad had a desk, and you'd go back to the back closet and open the door, and it was dark in there, and that's where the furnace was. And on top of the furnace was a jar, and in the jar were the pretzels. Get a nice hard pretzel from the dark spot next to the furnace. That's where we'll end today, with a pretzel.
And take a deep breath. And let it out. And we'll put some notes in the chat box.
So here are some notes. The little squirrel teeth, unforgettable. Randy breeding pumpkins complete with squirrel carvings, perfect for pumpkin pies. What is inside? Love how you allow your story to walk its own way. Proud pumpkins, thanks for the chuckles. Pumpkins and patches, size questions, squirrels related to Billas? Conspiracy? Could be.
Maryellen, do you have some comments from the crowd?
Not yet, but I'm sure they'll start.
Okay, they'll come up.
Here we go. Okay, Karen says, sounds like you'll have those pumpkins multiplying like rabbits in no time. I didn't have to say that your pumpkin looks like a watermelon. Knowing it was that close, then there are pretzels. Eileen says, pumpkin patch horror, enlivening, terrorizing squirrels with big teeth lingering.
Good. Thank you, Randy, for that story, and thanks
you
everyone for your
for
comments.
Witnessing.
Yeah. So that's the end of the stories, and again, we want to thank you all for coming online to watch. We are going to be doing another one of these. We have 2 more scheduled. Actually, Maryellen, can you give us those dates again?
I sure can. The next one is Wednesday, October 19th. That's at 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern. And the last one we have is Monday, October 24th at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern.
Actually, it would be the 35 minutes after the hour. Is that right?
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Yes, 35 minutes after the hour.
Yeah. Great. And you can find out more about InterPlay if you want at interplay.org. And you can also find the listing for this thing on our website as well. If you don't have that, hope you'll subscribe to our channel. And we appreciate your witnessing and also your comments, and glad to be able to share that with you. Thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And thank you, storytellers.
Thank you.